Hi, welcome to a general HMSC safety training video, which is part of our onboarding process. My name is Cinnamon Moffett, and I'm the research program manager at Oregon State University's Hatfield Marine Science Center located in Newport, Oregon. This training video is going to talk a little bit about our tsunami evacuation procedures, as well as general safety at Hatfield. Depending on your position, you might also be asked to take an additional training meeting with me after this video at a later date. But let's get started. So the Hatfield Marine Science Center is located in the tsunami inundation zone. That means when we have an earthquake off our shores, we will have a tsunami at Hatfield. This particular map that I'm showing you now is produced by a group called Tsunami. They do a bunch of mapping work for areas all around Oregon, and they have produced this map to show two different types of tsunami risks at Hatfield. The first is a distant tsunami, and the second is a local tsunami. So let me talk through those just a little bit. This map is definitely showing worst case scenario, not the most likely or the most probable event, but worst case. And we use this map for planning purposes at Hatfield specifically because we don't want to be wrong. We want to make sure that we are using the worst case scenario mapping for all of our planning purposes. So on this map, you see a couple different colors. Green is safe and outside of the worst case scenario tsunami evacuation area. And so what we're seeing in the orange is the run up on the landscape for a distant tsunami. So that is one where the earthquake happened somewhere else. And we are going to see only a wave that comes. There is no damage because there is no earthquake here until the water comes. And the nice thing, the good thing about that is we have time. So we are notified that we'll be receiving a distant tsunami wave at a minimum of 4 hours before the event happens. So if you're told that that is going to occur, you just need to get to higher ground. You can get in your car and drive home, drive to Starbucks, whatever you need to do. You just need to be outside of Hatfield because on this map, as you can see, Hatfield is located right here in the middle of the orange color, which is the worst case scenario run up for a distant tsunami. The one we spend a little bit more time worrying about though is what happens if we have a local event. So what I'm talking about there is if we have a rupture of the Cascadia subduction zone fault, which is right off our coastline. If that happens, we will have a tsunami at Hatfield. How big it is dependent on a couple of factors, and we often refer to them as either small, medium, large, or extra large events. And so for us, it really just, we're going to work on worst case scenario. So let's say it's an XX large event. That means that we've had a rupture right off our coast, and we will have a tsunami within 20 minutes of when the ground starts to shake. So that means that when you feel the ground moving at Hatfield, you have 20 minutes to get to high ground. You have a couple different options on how to get there that we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about, but I want you to understand that when the ground starts to shake, that starts the timer, and you need to be to high ground before that wave comes, because that wave, again, worst case scenario, will be 28 feet of water. That is more than a 2-story building. So again, if this is a worst case scenario event, that means that the shaking is going to last a little while. So for that 20 minutes that you have before the tsunami wave comes, about 5 to 7 minutes of that, you might not be able to stand. And so in other places, you might have heard duck, cover, and hold until the shaking stops in relation to earthquake preparedness. Here at Hatfield and along the coast, you might have to duck, cover, and hold to protect yourself. But the second that you can go, even if the shaking hasn't stopped, I want you to go. I want you to move to high ground because the earthquake is bad, but the tsunami is coming. And the more time you have to get to high ground, the better. And there's a couple of reasons for that. High ground is a couple different options. It's either a natural hill that's a little ways away or the top of a building, but it's going to take you time to get there. Not only is it going to take you time to travel there, you're also going to need to get out of your building. And some of the buildings at Hatfield were built in 1965, long before we understood the threat of the Cascadia subduction zone. And so you really might need a few minutes to figure out how you're going to navigate, how to get around a door that won't open, to get around things that have fallen in the hallway. So we say you have 20 minutes from the time the ground starts to shake, but for 5 to 7 minutes of that, you're not going to be able to potentially move in a worst case scenario. And for a few more minutes of that, you might not be able to easily and quickly get out of your building. So now we're down to from 20 minutes down to 10 minutes to get to high ground. So the other thing you need to know about Hatfield is it is on an estuary, and humans do great things with estuaries. They love to fill them and build on them. So unfortunately, what that means for us, we have a beautiful view, but Hatfield is built on fill. And that means that liquefaction, lateral spreading, and vertical drop are all a possibility at Hatfield. So the second you can get out of the building and you can start to move to high ground, I want you to do that, because the landscape is not going to look like it does now. And in fact, when we're talking about getting to high ground, you're doing that by foot. You are not getting into a car and trying to drive, because our roadways will not be drivable. So let's talk about the options of where you can go. The first option is this hill right here that I'm circling on the screen now, which is called Safe Haven Hill. It doesn't really matter how you get to this hill, just get there. So you can travel on the road, you can travel through the parking lots. The goal is to get to Safe Haven Hill. The thing that I want you to be aware of, though, is that along the roadway, there are several signs that look like this circle, tsunami evacuation route. That's great, follow those signs, but they take you under the bridge before they take you up to the hill. I do not want you to go under the bridge after a major earthquake. And in fact, even a mild earthquake, this bridge is going to have damage and might have debris that is falling, and it might be collapsing. And so what I want you to do, instead of going under the bridge, you're going to follow the road or however you're getting your way up to the hill, but you're going to target the Motel 6 parking lot. That is the place where I want you to cross over 101 and go up to Safe Haven Hill. There won't be any traffic on 101 because the bridge will be damaged, so it'll be safe for you to cross over and get up to the hill. Once you get to the hill, it doesn't matter how you get to the top. There's some ramp, there's some stairs. The idea is you have a total of 20 minutes to get to high ground, so get to high ground, get to the top of that hill, however you can get there. Once you're at the top of the hill, we're going to be there for a little while. In fact, it might even be up to 2 days. And so what's at the top of this hill is a shipping container full of supplies. The shipping container has things like water, trauma first aid, shelter, sanitation, emergency bars like those SOS survival bars, but also communication with the outside world. And so Incident Command for Newport knows about the Safe Haven Hill shelter area, assembly area, and they'll be the ones that tell us it's safe to come down. And the reason we need to wait until we get that all clear is, as you can see from the map, this hill is surrounded still by all those beautiful colors. And so there's a risk, and we want to make sure that risk is minimized before we come down. So we're going to wait for any secondary tsunami waves or any aftershocks, anything that would cause another batch of water to come into this area before we come down. Once we come down, you can either activate your own emergency plan, or you can head up to the community college. Community college is being set up not only as a 2-day assembly area, but also as a 3-week shelter. That means that there's actual food and warm blankets and other things being set up at the community college. And so that'll be the place that we go to after we get through those first 2 days. We take a deep breath and we say, okay, now what are we doing? How do we get people safely across the river? How do we get people back to the valley? How do we get people home? But that is our 2-stage evacuation plan. Okay, I would like to show you another map of possible high ground when you're at Hatfield. And that is of the new Marine Studies building. That building has been built as a vertical evacuation building and is heavily engineered for that purpose. So on this map, you can see here is Safe Haven Hill, and here is the new Marine Studies building. The Marine Studies building, like I said, is built as a vertical evacuation structure, which means that it has been engineered to survive worst case scenario earthquake and the tsunami. We just need to get to the roof. To get to the roof, there is a very large, very obvious ramp on the outside that you can take to get to the top of the building if you feel the ground shaking and we're having an earthquake. You also can go in the building, or if you're in the building already, use the staircases to get to the roof. Those staircases are designed to be able to flex and move separately from the building itself, giving it the maximum stability to be able to get to the roof using those stairs. The other thing that this building has is an elevator that is purposely designed to help people get to the roof after the earthquake. That elevator is on the east side of the building and is marked as the emergency elevator. And after an event, you can use that elevator safely to get to the roof. And so all of those things allow us to be able to get to high ground right here on the building that's on site. Both of these sites are acceptable places for vertical or for evacuation after you feel the earthquake. One is a natural structure, one is a built structure, and it's really up to you and what you're comfortable with on which one of those sites you go to. It also might depend a little bit on where you happen to be on campus and whether you have time to get to one side or the other. It also might matter of how mobile you are. If you've been injured in the earthquake, you might have to change your first choice plans and go to something that's a little bit closer. But that's a little bit up to you and your personal choice. Both the natural hill and the top of the building are safe places to go if you feel the ground moving. A little bit more detail about the building. We talked about it being a vertical evacuation structure. It is twice as deep as it is tall. It's got a very large foundation under the building to allow it to deal with the type of sediment that this building is built on. It also has blowout walls, which means that when the tsunami wave comes, those walls will fall and allow the water to move through the building without trying to knock the building over. The building is also built in such a way that the I-beams that hold up the building are not along the outside edge. They're inside the building just a little bit, basically providing a bumper around the outside of the building in case we have any debris strikes, making sure that we're safe on top of the building. So both Safe Haven Hill and the top of the building have those same emergency supplies. So we talked a little bit about that with Safe Haven Hill. There is a container or a room of supplies on the top of the building that have trauma first aid and emergency bars and water and shelter. And again, communication with the outside world to tell us when it's safe to come back down off of this building. But just like we talked about before, we might be there for just a little while, up to 2 days, to make sure we're all clear to come safely down and activate our own personal plans or head up to the community college. So a couple of other things to talk about. We talked a little bit about if you feel the ground shaking, you got 20 minutes to get to high ground. Part of that, you're not going to be able possibly to stand or move. And once you stand and move, you start trying to leave. The world's going to look a little bit different and it might take you a little bit of time. Out of all the things that we're going to talk about today, this next thing is the hardest part. So Hatfield values 1 fatality over 2. And what that means is that you're responsible for you. You've got to get to high ground in the time that you have. We have told you that when the ground starts to shake, you have 20 minutes to get to high ground. That means if somebody is hurt or injured, you're going to do everything you can to take care of them. I'm sure that that's what you're going to do, but there might be a point in time when you have to decide, and you're going to have to decide to take care of yourself. You know how much time it takes to get, you know where you need to go. Those decisions are going to have to be made, and I'm telling you, take care of yourself. Help those if you can, but take care of yourself and get to high ground in the time that we have. All that being said, one thing you can do to help is that Hatfield does not have any kind of an alarm system for a warning system for earthquakes. That means that the only warning you have for a local event is the shaking of the ground. If you feel the ground shaking, as soon as you can move, you're going to head to high ground. What I ask that you do, if you have the presence of mind to do it, is go with purpose and go with voice. Go loudly, scream and yell. That was an earthquake. There's a tsunami on the way. I know where I'm going. Follow me, follow me, follow me. You're going to get folks that are following you faster and more easily than if you're trying to gather them up and get them up to the top of the building or up to Safe Haven Hill. If you're screaming and yelling, I know where I'm going, guess what? People are going to follow you, especially when we have folks on campus that maybe aren't as familiar with the risks that are here or even our campus. So if there's public in the visitor center or we have students in the ed wing, if you're screaming and yelling, I know where I'm going, that's going to get somebody to move and follow you. We also know that from studies around the world that people often need two things to get them to move after a traumatic event. So if you have the trauma of the shaking, somebody might not be processing really well, and they might be a little bit frozen. And if you're yelling and screaming, hey, I know where I'm going, all you've got to do is follow me. That means that Cinnamon, who's a little bit nervous and maybe not processing as well as she thinks she's going to, all I have to do is follow you. I don't have to process, I don't have to think, I just need to follow. So that is the one thing that we do ask. If you have the presence of mind, after the shaking stops and you evacuate the buildings, go with purpose, go with voice, know where you're going, but go and be loud on the way. The other thing I wanted to let everybody know is it doesn't matter whether it's a worst case scenario or a small earthquake. If you feel an earthquake, go to high ground. It does not matter if it's big or little. We're kind of bad as humans to decide, is this a worst case event or is this a small event? If you feel shaking, I need you to go to high ground. We'll get to the top of the building, we'll get to Safe Haven Hill, and if it's a small one, we'll be like, nice job, good job, everybody. We'll go down and we'll, carry on with what we were doing. But in case it's a bigger one and we just didn't process it, I want you on that high ground to make that decision. One thing I will tell you, if you have to break something to get to high ground and it happens to be a small one, so let's say you break a window to get out of the space that you're working in, we don't care. Get to high ground, get to the top of the building, get to Safe Haven Hill, even if it's a small one. Again, we'll just be happy that it was a small one. We'll come back down and we'll fix the window. Your life is the thing that's most important to us, not the window, not the infrastructure. Okay, other thing to just think a little bit about is that you might hear a lot about to-go bags when you're out on the coast. To-go bags are supplies in a travelable backpack, something like that you carry with you. I have one in my car, I have one in my house, I have one in my office. But at Hatfield, because we have supplies at both of our high grounds, they become a little less important. And you don't necessarily need to grab those before you go to high ground. It's great if you can. It takes pressure off of the resources that we have in both of the high ground, but you don't have to if you don't need to, because I don't want you to waste the time. Now, if this happens somewhere else and you're driving, having one in your car so that you can abandon your car and go to high ground is a great thing. But at Hatfield, because we have supplies available to you, you don't necessarily need to bring them, except if you have some medical issue that requires medication. We don't have medication at either of these high grounds that will take care of something like diabetes. So if you need one of those medications, that to-go bag becomes much more important for you. The other reason it might be important is if you have any kind of food allergies. So those SOS emergency bars are loaded with all sorts of allergens. So if you have a nut allergy with anaphylactic issues with the type of food that might be in there, you need to make sure you have your own supplies. So the to-go bag becomes much more important for both of those reasons. But for other folks, your main goal, get to high ground, get there as fast as you can, and make sure that you're there within the 20-minute time frame that we have before that tsunami wave comes. Okay, I'm going to show you a couple of tools that might be valuable to you. We talked a little bit about the fact that there's not a warning system for a local event, but there is a warning system for a distant event, and that is called Nixle. So if you were to Google Nixle, Newport, Nixle, and you would see a page something like this. This page has a place where you can sign up. If you sign up, this Nixle system basically sends you a text or does a reverse 911 call. I would encourage you to sign up for things that are life-threatening only. Otherwise, it contacts you a lot and it might cause you to want to turn off this app. But if you sign up for those life-threatening events only, when you get a Nixle warning, you're going to pay attention. So things like wildfire evacuations came out on Nixle. Distant tsunami wave estimates are going to come out on Nixle. Again, the thing that's nice about those distant tsunami warnings is we have some time. We typically have about 4 hours or more to decide that we need to do something different. But having this information come to you empowers you to make those decisions, and it doesn't depend on somebody at Hatfield coming around and telling you there's going to be a distant tsunami wave at a certain time, get to high ground. This is something that you can have that empowers you to make those decisions. The other tool that I want to show you is called NVS Nanoos, Nanoos. It's a really great data visualization tool. And in fact, I will pop back out so you can just see, if you type that in, this is a landing page you're going to see. And if you select tsunami evacuation zone, you get a map that looks just like the map that we've been looking at for all of Washington and Oregon. And if you zoom into any location on that map, it'll tell you whether you're in or out of the tsunami zone, just like we were doing as we were practicing around Hatfield. The other thing that's really great about this tool is if you continue to zoom in, let's say you put an address in right here, it actually will create this little pop-up box, which you can see that says custom brochure. If you click on the custom brochure, not only will it tell you, are you in or out of the tsunami zone, it'll actually add the arrows like we were looking at for the Marine Studies building to show you where is your closest high ground and the best way to get there. So a really powerful tool if you're working along the coast, if you're traveling and exploring along the coast, or if you're looking for a place to rent or buy in Newport area, or anywhere in Washington and Oregon for that matter. So it's a really, really powerful tool. Again, just giving you the information so you have what you need to make the best choices you can. Okay, we're gonna walk away a little bit from the evacuation for earthquakes and just talk about plain old evacuation for something like a fire alarm. If you hear a fire alarm or for any reason need to evacuate a building, we have two assembly areas at Hatfield. One is located in the grassy area by the visitor center next to our public parking lot. The other one is behind the library. Both of these areas are places that you can go, assemble, get out of the way for emergency responders, but also to get more information about what happens next. So those are good places to go. We don't have people standing there with clipboards trying to find everybody. So it doesn't really matter which one you go to, but it's a good place for you to go and get more information in case of an emergency. And remember, if you hear a fire alarm, you need to evacuate the building. So this next map looks very similar, but instead of arrows, has little hearts. The hearts are the location of the AEDs or external defibrillators. If you need one, probably not going to help you, but if you need them for somebody else, it's really helpful to know where those are located. So like I said, we have one in every building. In the Marine Studies building, there's one on the first and third floor, but make sure you notice where those are at. The other thing you should know is that if you do need to call 911 for medical emergency, please remember that you need to call them and then go out and meet them. So it's best to tell them where you're going to meet them. Our emergency responders are pretty familiar with our campus, but they're not great about finding a particular room in a particular building. But if you call them and you say you have a medical emergency, please meet me in the public parking lot by the visitor center. That would be this parking lot right here. Or you can tell them to meet you in the ODF&W parking lot, which is the one right here by the Department of Fish and Wildlife. The other parking lot that they're familiar with is the library parking lot, which is the one right here by the library. So again, save time, make sure you tell them where you're going to meet them, go get them, and then bring them back to your medical emergency. So I also wanted to point out this poster. You will find this poster all over the place at Hatfield. It's by the doors, it's by first aid kits, those kind of things. And basically it's letting you know if you have a medical emergency, you need to call 911. So the one thing you should know is that if you're using a landline, one of those black phones on somebody's desk, it is 911. You need to get an outside line before you can call 911. If possible, use your cell phone, but if you've got to use those landlines, use 911 so you get that outside line. The other thing that's on this poster that might be helpful for you, if you happen to be here between 7 a.m. and 1 a.m. and you have a non-medical emergency, something like, let's say you walk in and there's water on the floor. There's the facilities number right here. Those are the folks that you would call to deal with those non-life-threatening emergencies. So you don't have to worry about having their number memorized. It's on this poster and you can find it there and they will help you deal with those non-life-threatening emergencies. The other number that's on here, and I hope that you're not on campus during these times, but if you are, if you're on site from 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning, the number to call for those non-medical emergencies is a number in Corvallis. I know that sounds a little bit weird, but it is a 24-hour help desk that has the correct numbers to call at Hatfield so that you don't have to worry about who to call. You just need to call that 24-hour help desk. The other thing we have on this poster is the number to our security team. The security company is a private company called TCB. Let me zoom in just a little bit to that number so you can see it a little bit better. So TCB is our security company. They are unarmed, but they are on site from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and they are stationed in the lobby of the Marine Studies building. So if you need them, you can get them in the lobby or you can call them here. These are really great individuals to call if something just doesn't look right. Somebody's wandering around and trying doors that may be looking into windows, doing something that just makes your hair stand up on the back of your neck. These are the folks that you can call. They're also really great if you're here late at night and maybe you want somebody to walk with you out to your car. So feel free to give them a call. Their number is right here on this poster. But mostly what the poster is telling us is that if you have a medical emergency or anything where you're not sure and you need help, go ahead and call 911. So a couple other things that I wanted to show you are actually on the HMSC website. So if you haven't spent much time here yet, if you just Google or use whatever platform you use to put in HMSC, you'll get this landing page. If you go up to the tab that says About and you click it, and you scroll down to Employee Resources, which is right here, and you click that. Couple of things here. All the information that we've talked about today are in the emergency information. So if it's helpful for you to see it again, you're welcome to take a look at the written material around the tsunami preparedness at Hatfield, the evacuation map, which we've talked about, and the emergency operation plan. The other thing I wanted to show you on this site, which might be helpful, is under listservs. If you're interested in being connected to Hatfield or sharing information or getting things like there's free food in the staff lounge, or there's this great learning opportunity, this seminar that's coming up on Thursday, or whatever it happens to be, the HMSC community list is how Hatfield talks to itself. Why I'm bringing that up here, not only to help you feel connected, but also for emergency management, where delayed openings due to weather or water breaks or anything like that will come out or is on the community list. So all you need to do is click on that, sign up for it, and you'll get information sent right to your email about all sorts of things that are happening at Hatfield, but also around that emergency issues for delayed opening. So I know we've covered a lot in this training. We've talked about the fact that if we have an earthquake, we will have a tsunami. You have 20 minutes from the time the ground starts to shake to get to one of the two high grounds that we've talked about. And it's important that you don't linger, that you go as quickly as possible to those high grounds. We also talked a little bit about, for non-earthquake evacuation, the assembly areas for things like fire alarms. We've also talked about some general safety things, numbers to call, where to find the AEDs. I do understand that that was a lot of information. So if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to reach out to me. My contact information is on the screen. I'm happy to answer any questions and to talk more. But I do thank you for taking the time and spending a little bit of your day with me to learn about Hatfield safety. So thank you, everybody.